March 6, 2025. Here we are talking about the times, the glorious times we live in.
Woo!
This car wreck people can't look away from.
It's not a car wreck yet. It's more like we're speeding toward an abyss, and we may do a Thelma and Louise. That is, I didn't see that if they made it over the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, no, they did not clear that gap.
I feel like they left it ambiguous.
Well, that's how they died. That was a pretty good film.
I haven't seen it. I should.
It has a cameo of Brad Pitt looking extra hot, all shirtless.
I did see that clip.
Yeah.
That was yummy.
Yeah, Thelma and Louise, though, that's some people see Thelma and Louise as our government. Actually, nobody sees our government as Thelma and Louise. But our government, like...
We are Thelma and Louise along for the ride in the car that is our government.
Mm-hmm. So, what I brought up a couple days ago was the difference between the questions and the follow-up questions. And also, the big thing is the framing of it. For instance, one of the big ones is Ukraine. Now, Russia invaded Ukraine. Nobody's denying that, right? Okay, that's bad. Well, the follow-up question to that is why? And if you really just want to be very blind, willfully blind, and I know ostriches don't stick their head in the sand, but that's the analogy, is if you want to just, it was unprovoked. It's not like Ukraine did anything. And then you look a little bit behind the scenes and you're like, oh, well, Zelensky, he ran on neutrality. His party was supposed to be neutral because the U.S. was talking about taking Ukraine and making it part of NATO. And that was, half of Ukraine is of Russian descent. And just 35 years ago, it was all the USSR. And so he's like, hey, listen, no, let's not do this NATO thing.
When did Zelensky get elected? That was a question I had, because I'm a little bit more pro-Ukrainian than you are, but I agree with the premise, which I think is the thesis here, that we don't ask the why. Like, for instance, with the Doge stuff, like, they're cutting the Department of Education. Well, what parts and why?
You have a phone, so you can find out when Zelensky became president, but
because that's when the NATO offer came in, right?
No, the NATO,
the offer's been on the table for a while, and that was part of the agreement that, Ukraine would not have nuclear arms. That's my understanding. But in exchange, and this was part of Europe agreeing to this as well in America, that we would not expand NATO an inch toward the east. And we repeatedly broke that promise. And then I knew at some point we were entertaining Ukraine for NATO again when we shouldn't. But what I don't know is the degree to which Zelensky was actually serious about trying to join NATO. That maybe you can enlighten me on.
Well, that's when Boris Johnson was, at the behest of the U.S., went down and said, hey, don't sign these papers with Putin saying that you will never join NATO. Don't do that. And it was like, we'll have your back. We want you to be part of NATO. And Zelensky's like, well, you guys will have my back? And I mean, the joke is, yeah, they'll have your back, just not your front. You guys are all going to go up there and die.
That's right. How could they? But it's so naive. Like, I don't know the history of Europe for breaking promises, but America basically is NATO. Without America, there is no NATO. So historically, what do? We go in, we break up governments, we seize their resources. Like, what are we? We're doing mining now in Ukraine. I forget for which primary resource, or at least that's on the table.
Rare earth minerals.
Right.
The rare earths.
Opium in Afghanistan. We're going in and we cause chaos. We destabilize the region and we immediately leave as soon as our interests are elsewhere, but we still have hold of your resources. The cheapest way to basically own a government. So why on earth? That was the mistake Ukraine made. They shouldn't. Well, the first mistake was to not have nuclear arms. A country with nuclear arms is more or less a safe country. North Korea, they're insane. They have nuclear arms. They are left in their own bubble. You should never, ever leave yourself defenseless. That was an incredibly naive move on their forefathers' parts.
I'm just envisioning big mushroom clouds coming out of a torso, nuclear arms.
That would be beautiful art.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god.
Like bear arms.
Yeah, I got it in my head now. There's
Right.
an actual like game we play with the kids with that. Like you piece together your bear monster. Yeah, that's cool.
Okay, so the thing is, like, Zelensky, his country did get invaded, and he's like, we got to defeat Putin, and there's bad blood, and I get it, and Trump's like, yeah, but no, because we've just been giving you a bunch of money. He's like, well, you guys are gonna keep giving us money, and Trump's like, yeah, we'll keep giving you money. We're just gonna take all your minerals and sell them and give you a cut.
Right.
and say thank you.
All right. So yeah, that was the killer. You should be grateful. Oh my God,
Fucking
that
JD Vance.
man. Oh, I've never
Disgusting.
wanted to put a man in a pinata and suit and hang him from a tree so badly. By the arms, boys and girls, by the arms. But you can bat at his legs. Yeah, it's fucked up. But it's also smart. Like, let's also be realistic. Like, whenever life is not a fairy tale, Highness. If you go in and you help a country, you need to not come out more broke than when you went in. By putting people there, Americans on the ground without Ukraine actually being a part of NATO, it protects Ukraine because you don't want to mess with American citizens, which could trigger a larger war, larger invasion, all that good stuff. Putin is obviously afraid enough of the power of Europe combined with America to not push it that far. So it's a smart deal. I think you were the one who were pointing out, like,
What do you think the deal is going to be? What do you think the deal?
I think Trump just tells us what the deals are. I don't
No,
think
what
he,
is the deal? He hasn't told us. What's the deal you think he's cutting with Putin?
Oh, with Putin? No, I have no idea what's going on
What do you
there.
think? I mean, if you're going to guess.
I would guess land and resources stay with Putin. I would guess that part of Ukraine would become annexed into him, and I would guess access to resources, no tariffs, like lifting any and all restrictions on ties with the Russian economy, reopening of oil lines. I'm guessing Putin doesn't just want Ukraine because it's part of NATO or the potential for the NATO threat, or because like it has Russian lineage. I think that's part of like a little bit of a manifest destiny on Russia's part, but Ukraine must also be special for specific resources. I know farming is a big one. I think they already got Crimea, which is access to the sea, so they don't really need that anymore. Honestly, I'm not well read enough on it to really know the full spectrum of it, but that is funny. We're so focused on what the United States and Ukraine are going to do. Nobody's really asked what Putin and Trump are working out behind the scenes for Russia's sake. What do you think?
I think they're going to give him the Donbass region. The dumbass region.
That's like primary farmland. There's no way that they can take that much.
Is it?
Yeah,
It's
I
not a
believe
port?
so. Let's look it up, actually. I don't know.
I would assume that it's
I know Odessa is the port. I know
Okay.
that one. And I think that's still under Russian control. They probably would have lost that. But again, like if they already have Crimea, they have access to the sea. So I don't get what the importance of that is. But
I don't know. People are so upset
Donbass.
about it. I'm like, cry me a river. You know.
you're all heart.
Uh,
NMS region.
Yeah. So the Donbass region, the regions that they already are in control of, I would say Trump's probably just gonna be like, all right, Russia, you get that. No, don't cry, Zelensky. You can have the rest still. You know. And what does it say?
It seems like referring to the Donbass region, Ukraine, is an industrial and coal mining region in eastern Ukraine, primarily consisting of Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts. I am so sorry for butchering that. Key facts: industrial and economic hub. It has been a major center for coal mining, steel production, and heavy industry.
Rare earths.
Yeah.
Not so rare earths, but just earths.
And it's been a conflict region, so it's not farming per se, but yeah, rare earths.
No, industrial.
Yeah.
And my thing is, way back in 1999, that's when Putin got in office. He was like, "Hey, what could I be part of NATO?" He's like, I'm considering being part of NATO, and of course, NATO. No, the whole point of NATO is no Russia, bad Russia, and people, in general, at least on the Democrat left-leaning side, say Russia bad, Russia bad, Russia bad. Same with China. China bad, China bad, China bad. But the Russian bad, I get it. You don't like Putin as a dictator and he subjugates people.
Communism in general, that was an ideological war.
Well, it's not communism, right? It's dictator.
Oh, let's see. How would they label themselves?
They would say it's a republic. I would think they would say that it's democratic. I would think they're like, oh no, everybody loves Putin.
They love him so much. Please don't hurt my family.
So
semi-presidential republic.
Semi-president.
But functioning as an authoritarian regime.
Yeah, right. Because nobody's stepping to him.
Right. But, we think about in our lifetime, like a lot of fear mongering was more in our parents' lifetime with the Cold War and trying to stop the spread of communism. That's such a dance that humanity has been doing from the beginning. Christians versus Muslims, like Spain, I think I told you, like there were a few choice battles, and if they had been lost, it was very highly likely that most of Europe would have been Muslim. Jews versus Muslims. Muslims are in the thick of a lot of this. I'm just
well, they're kind of like they're just the most outspoken about. They say the quiet part out loud. They're like, death to Jews, death to America, Allah forever. It's like, okay, that's not.
But the point is, it's such a human thing if you have something that is a little too different from you, or even within Europe, fascist versus democracy. Like a lot of the history of World War II, whether like the Civil War in Spain or I forget everything that went on in Italy, but there was in Germany, obviously. There's usually like, I don't know, the Luke Skywalker dynamic is always at play. There's always a light versus a dark side, and everybody just thinks they're the light side. But nuanced, in reality, everybody's working in their own interests, best interests, so that cannot... I don't know if it makes you a villain, but it certainly doesn't make you a saint. And yeah, the United States has certainly been less than saintly throughout its history.
Less than saintly, not a great place. So, yeah, I got into this thing with this girl online, and she's like, because this guy's like, man, I said I supported Ukraine, and all these people went at me. And I was like, yeah, that's because you're, in effect, supporting the continuation of a war that we are funding, meaning you're for the deaths of Ukrainians who don't want to fight, but they get their bank accounts frozen if they don't want to fight. And then they're fighting Russia, who also doesn't want to fight. And this girl says, yeah, you think that's good. Putin is taking people out of prison, and he's forcing them to go to war. So how is he good? I'm like, exactly. So you're taking people that don't want to fight on either side, and you're like, you're going to fight. Now, it's not like Zelensky or Putin will feel anything. I mean, they're just going to be in their ivory towers looking down.
There's a high chance Zelensky could, especially in the beginning, that he might have been taken out.
Right, and apparently he is a hero because he didn't leave the regions that were being bombed.
His family didn't. His family left the region that was being bombed, but they didn't leave Ukraine either. Yeah. I'm a little different. Like, my stance on this is Ukraine. I'm very much so a free agency, free will person. If Ukraine wanted to join NATO, I would rather be engaged in a war for the right to do so than say that, Putin was somehow in the right. That's just fear.
So they did a
fear
poll,
and its manifest destiny.
They did a poll back in 2016,
Politics.
And they found out that 80% of Ukraine did not want to join NATO. They did that poll.
Yeah.
And that times
and
changed.
Zelensky should have listened, and if that's true, then he should probably step down.
No, well, he ran on neutrality. He was kind of bullied or coerced, or there was money in it for him by the U.S. and Boris Johnson from the U.K. about, hey, no, man, you really need to join NATO. And why do we want them in NATO? What does that mean? Well, that means we can go and set up missile silos on Russia's border.
Right. Yeah, it was really silly of him.
So peace talks, it's like after, and the fact that Zelensky's like, oh, after this is all said and done, Putin needs to repay for what he does. It's always what happens. It's like, that probably is not going to happen.
But I wouldn't sanctify Russia in this either.
No.
It's no different than the United States. Just I think we're getting at here is there's just villains and villains and villains. There's not,
Nobody's
or really
good.
just people making stupid decisions, and a lot of people dying based on the stupid decisions of other people.
What is the opposite of vilifying? There's vilifying and then sanctifying.
Sanctifying, just yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's not the right word we're looking
mean-
for. Idealizing,
Yeah, there's a word.
turning into a hero.
Well, ask her what the opposite of vilifying is.
Yeah.
There's got to be a word for that. But whatever that is, it seems like, I mean, when I see Zelensky, I'm like, he seems like a pretty cool dude.
I like him. I like him better than Putin. I think Putin is a very evil man.
Well,
That doesn't necessarily, like, that has nothing to do with the
on a
nomenclatures
personal
of war.
scale, who's worse, Trump or Putin?
They're both obnoxious. That's why they get along.
I would say Putin is as likable, if not more so, than Trump. He just seems like he has I don't know, not so utterly despisable. And no doubt he's trying to do what he thinks is best for Russia.
I don't know about that. I keep going back to the phrase manifest destiny. I think there is, you remember manifest destiny for the United States, like the belief that we deserve to own the states from coast to coast. And then I forget the line that they made.
That's a Christian thing, right? Because
no, it
wanted
was-
us to have it from the savages or whatever.
I mean, Christians were America and America was Christian, so the two would have been inexplicably entwined, but it was more than that. It was an ideology that we were the divine, we were the best people suited for the job. We were the best people suited for the land. It was our destiny. And I think the USSR still has a lot of that mentality. They are a shadow of the former empire that they were, and I think Putin is still of an age and of narcissistic temperament. To really believe and be willing to sacrifice lives to achieve that image.
The image?
The image of being a complete empire. Like, it wasn't so long ago that empire politics played into a lot of like national identity. Like
Right.
even like England giving up countries after World War II and Winston Churchill not wanting that to happen at all. Like, think about the outcry that we would hear from the United States if we gave Hawaii back to Hawaiians or Alaska back to native tribes in Alaska.
Well, that's the thing. It's like,
look, we've even done things like we're pissing on the Gulf of Mexico. It's the Gulf of America now. Like,
people forget that Mexico is part of America, so...
you see, it's that attitude.
Does Gulf mean under something?
I think Mexico would be like, okay, we'll be part of America. That sounds awesome. Could we knock down the wall?
Yeah, it could be the 52nd state.
I would take that. I would like a warmer climate, personally.
Yeah, well, the question is, like, for a while there, I was like, man, we're all just humans on this world.
Right.
But what I was really overlooking is culture.
Yeah. Culture is
America,
almost
yeah.
like religion in a sense. Like,
Big time.
yes.
Especially in
You'll do a
Middle
lot of
East.
very silly things in the name of something vague that you believe in.
Right. And autonomy and freedom of speech, people really like in this country. And, well, this country is really divided. I'd say half this country, if you go to school, you really
If
are
you go
taught.
to school, you're basically indoctrinated into religion.
Well,
Like,
you're taught that we are kind of the worst country ever, you know, for
yeah.
we enslaved people. The original inhabitants, they all died from smallpox. And it's time to recognize what we did. And it's, and so by the time you're done with it, especially if you're white, you're like, oh my gosh, all lives matter is offensive, and
yeah.
which
Well, like that
maybe
girl
it
on that dating thing, like, he didn't get into Black Lives Matter. He just wants to stay out of it. I can't respect him as a human being. It's like, well, if you go to school in America, you're allowed to have one opinion and one opinion only, and anybody else who doesn't is the other. And not only are they ostracized, they're in danger of job loss, reputation loss, financial hardship. It's very costly to talk to people who are quote unquote educated in this country because they can't tolerate nuance of discussion. Anything that looks even a little bit different as an opinion is considered a direct threat. The only other place I've encountered that kind of thinking is in the Christian church. It's really funny, like Democrats whining about people losing the party. Most people that I know of, myself included, were very Democratic leaning until about 2016 when radicals took over freedom of speech, essentially. And you're trying to teach people to hate themselves in school, to feel guilty over things they can't possibly fix, to shut their mouths, to understand that if you were born white and a male, that really there's no place for you, and that you should feel eternally guilty about things that you can't fix, you'll never be able to fix, and you don't deserve to fix. You just deserve to step out. And then we wonder why our young men aren't getting married anymore or going to school anymore.
Well, it's because they're jacking off on the internet.
I mean, that part too. But you told them they're worthless. Why would you stick around in a place where you're told you're worthless? That's the stupidest thing I ever heard.
Well, you're told you're worthless and that the whole thing you're in is worthless, and it's worthless because of people that look like you, if you're white. And if you're not white, then you're just oppressed by the people that are white. And it's actually impossible for you to be racist if you are not white, because you are oppressed by the people until you're not impressed by the people. And it's like, and the question is, well, when are they not oppressed? And the answer is, well, we're working towards that. But for now, we need more outcrying and more division.
It's just shrieking louder and louder and louder, like you enjoy being in a constant state of crisis and martyrdom, again found in the church. I'll tell you a story. So my grandfather, was Jewish. He was in Germany during the time of World War II, right before the war broke out. He was forced to wear the Star of David, and one day he came home from university bloodied up from people stoning him, literally stoning him. That's about as biblical as it gets. Yeah. And he had scars on his body for the rest of his life. His parents took one look at him and said, oh, hell no. Smuggled him out to Austria. They followed later. They all got to England where they were safe. Years later, I was rooming with a girl who was of German descent, and I told her that story, and she just looked at me and she went pale. Blonde hair, blue eyes, white. She said my grandfather was not only a Nazi, but he was an unrepentant Nazi, and he was a part of all that. And she just looked at me like, what's she going to do next? I'm like, cool. You think like that? No. Then why are you looking at me like that? Like, that has nothing to do with you.
Right.
What it is a cautionary tale about how easy it is to persuade people to become hateful towards one another. That is the lesson. Not that you want to blame the descendants of the Japanese for Pearl Harbor. You want to blame the descendants of Kamehameha for wars caused across Hawaii to unify Hawaii. I don't know that there's a single point in history up until the civil rights movements, which took place in America. And I'm sure there's history in Europe too, because slavery ended long before America got on board there. But
why wasn't there slavery?
There was, and it ended before. If you watched Outlander with me, you would have known that. But that's the first time I know of in at least American history, but I think it was a pivotal turning point for world history. That and what happened in South America, Gandhi, obviously, where people just started saying no to that. But prior to that, all historical context that I have is the history of literally everywhere is not only written in blood, but once you conquer it, there's always a portion of the population that is less than. Including there's been slaves throughout history. And do you know a culture that didn't have slaves?
No, I mean, that was what Elon Musk was saying to Don Lemon. It's like, no, everybody has ancestors that were slaves. It's just degrees of when.
Right. That's all it is.
Right, but okay.
And they tried to import, I remember Irish people, at first they tried enslaving them, and just terrible history, like literally breeding farms where they were trying to produce mulattoes. Just horrible things in history. Nobody denies that. But
did you say mulatto?
Well, that it's a white and black combination.
Mulatto.
Oh my God.
Mulatto.
See, under the new regime,
French.
I would be canceled. I'm not even politically
I don't think you're even allowed
enough.
to say that anymore.
I'm not. And actually, even saying this, like just thinking about like friends that I have, I don't want them to hear this podcast because they're not going to value me more than the words I'm speaking right now.
Yeah.
I value them more than that. But it's not a two-way thing because everybody's so hyper tense right now. You're this camp or the other camp. And I think there is a silent majority who are just like everybody, knock it the fuck off. I miss the 90s. I miss where people could agree to disagree. And that when you had a conversation where you were talking about nuanced things, you could potentially, I don't think people change their minds big time. People usually don't, but walk away with a slightly different perspective at least. Now the only thing you walk away with for having a slightly different perspective is job loss, friend loss, just loss. And it's become easier to be like that guy on the dating show where he's like, oh, I stay out of it. It's because he's scared to have an opinion. Because people like that woman, pretty self-righteous, if you thought anything even a little different or questioned anything even.
Which one?
How could you? The one you called horseface. Also not politically correct.
Oh, yeah.
I thought she was beautiful.
The show Love is Blind.
She seemed wholesome until she opened her mouth.
Well, she asked this guy, and they can't see each other, and they're talking through this wall on Love is Blind, and she asks, well, what do you think about Black Lives Matter? And he's like, I haven't really even looked into it. I don't know. She's like, but what do you think about it in general? I mean, I believe what happened to George Floyd, and he's just like, I haven't looked into it, and that to her was the ultimate turnoff because she can't.
But did you read his body language? It wasn't like, oh, I don't care. It was like, dude, I'm scared. That was his exact body language.
You think so? Because there's no way.
He wasn't flippant about it. He was like, you can't have an opinion, especially as a white male.
Yes, you can.
You can if you're
fully
you.
on board with Black Lives Matter. All lives do not matter. No, definitely not.
Right. You can have that opinion. You're right.
Yeah, that is the one. Which to me, it was just like.
Anyway, these people though, when they're like, you're all or nothing, when you expect people to be all or nothing, the only way you can stay in power, because that makes you a dictator, is if you're louder and more of a bully than everybody else around you. And that's what you get, like these big media news networks trying to tell us what to think. And people just aren't buying it anymore. Some of it got too real.
Yeah. Well, it got too real, but my thing is like, because whenever, I listen to the Joe Rogan podcast, I'm like, it always, I mean, right now we got the Doge thing going on. Doge.
Just a reference or like falling asleep and he's just smiling. I'm like, what? Doge.
But even a lot of times, at least what they were discovering with Doge, was it came down to like supporting of LGBTQ in like Liberia or Moldova, or like right for men to have sex with men in South Africa. It's like millions of dollars for that, and it's like.
Well, the startling thing was like more like once you start uncovering it, there's two startling things. The first is that all we hear is the horror. And just to be clear, like, I think I'm a little bit more like, I think they're being too much, it's too cowboy than I think you are. I think that this is something that would have behooved them to have taken a much more fine-tuned surgical instrument as opposed to a wrecking ball. But I also appreciate they only have 4 years, but there's just the rate at which they're doing it. I don't believe they're cutting only inappropriate jobs. I believe they're cutting both appropriate and inappropriate jobs. And there's going to be people that hurt because of it. We need to balance the budget, though. I agree. We are so in debt, we don't even understand that if we weren't a world power, we would actually be Venezuela right now. It's not okay what we've done, and we're hemorrhaging, and somebody needs to fix it, and the powers that be aren't going to like that. So that brings me to the first big scandal. Is that all we hear is that, which makes me not trust. I don't want to have to just trust like what Elon Musk is saying. But what I like is you go on Joe Rogan and he actually says, okay, so what are you doing? And he will very calmly break it down line by line. And it's this sort of conspiracy thing where you're like, you cut the Department of Special Education. We're like, I'm sitting here going, and then I look up and I'm asking very specifically what was cut. And having been in the DOE, it's all these middle management positions, at least that's the information I'm getting. Like, it's people who make it hard for other people to do their jobs and get paid exorbitant amount of money to do it. It's things like the reason why it takes 4 people to get your wheelchair delivered in 6 months. It's delay, it's red tape, it's controlling, it's bureaucracy that's never had a check put on it, and it's inefficient and it's expensive. And that does need to be addressed. It needed to be addressed years ago. And it's like Rogan said as well, like this was not This is something Democrats ran under the Clinton administration. They ran under that premise, let's clean this up. And like you said there too, like Clinton was somebody I would have voted for before Democrats became crazy lunatics, for lack of a better word, like ideological nutbags. Like some of the stuff you hear is so nutty and so one-sided, and it's kind of scary in its one-sidedness. But I mean, I can't say I don't like how they're going about it though. Like we just got I'm cut off for financial aid for like trying to get on an IDR plan. There's nothing in place for it.
Acronyms, what the hell is an IDR?
Income driven repayment plan. It affects me. I know people like my friend, she has people at the EPA that just like wholesale lost their job. Like I don't know exactly what they were doing, if they're these middle management positions that need to be targeted or if they were really, really necessary. But the fact is they just woke up one day and their job is gone.
Right.
That's also, and there's no plan. There's no plan for how do I replace these jobs.
Right.
I don't like that. I think they're in a hurry because they have 4 years and I think they feel entitled. I think it needs to be done, but I think the argument I made with you is it's like Game of Thrones. It's not that the ending was bad. It's that it needed more time to flesh the story out. And yeah, so I can't tell yet whether they're doing harm or good, but it's interesting. It's interesting at least.
I'd say this is the fallout when it comes to, I mean, what we're really seeing, that I'm just thinking about now, is we're seeing our entire generation, pretty much starting with us, maybe a little bit before, was told, get to
a degree.
Go to college.
Yeah.
Go to college. Go to college. Don't be one of these idiots that is doing something with their hands and working.
I went to college. I think I'm an idiot for it.
So all of us got good or at least adept at paperwork jobs where we're
useless jobs.
Well,
they're theoretical jobs.
They're really good as long as you have this army of people under you that don't have college degrees that are all actually doing actual work. And then there needs to be a couple of business people in charge of them. But if we're all these business people with our business degrees, and then we can all we can do is write papers and essays and and like, shuffle this and this Excel spreadsheet, that Excel. I'm like, but what are we
what
making?
Did you actually do?
No, yeah, what are we making as a country? It's like, and so really, you have these people that are like, oh man, I had this cushy job. I was putting stuff in file cabinets all day and making Xerox of things and forwarding things and calling people up. And then we all lost our job and it didn't make a damn lick of a difference to anybody except them. And then of course the media frames it of, well, now handicapped kids won't have a bus to get on.
Yeah, that's not when I broke it. When I asked like what specifically was being asked, that didn't come up at all. I would need to deep dive research more, but that's like once again inflated news. It's not really that's being targeted according to what I've seen so far. So far it's just middle management positions. It's like you said at the national parks, like, oh no, they're cutting off da-da-da-da-da. It's like, no, they're not cutting off the rangers, the people doing the actual work. Who were they cutting off instead?
Well, just the bureaucrats that say, okay, we need to have a commission about like what needs to be done for this clearing and that management, and so it's like management. It's not the actual people, but the thing is, like, I think a lot of people did get cut. Do we know? We that's the thing. And Elon's like, hey, listen, we report on every single thing we do on Doge.gov. Doge.gov, anybody can look it up. Challenge me on any of that. If you find anything,
there's one thing I've always respected about him. He's like, for better or for worse, it's not that he's always right, but he's always very transparent.
I know, and
that's something I don't think we've seen from a leader in our lifetime.
Seems like that's the only trans that matters anymore.
There's no such thing as trans anymore, Jasper.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's interesting. Yeah, and I think maybe later we should actually go through and look at, so since we keep talking about the Doge stuff, if we're going to podcast talk about it, we should probably read about it like actually a little.
Just have ChatGPT break it down.
My ChatGPT is a little bit stupid. Sometimes I think it's just messing with me. It's given me false information before, and then if I call it, it's like, oh yeah, oops, tee hee hee.
Oh, good catch there.
Because it's got a cush job. I mean, what does it do? Like, am I gonna fire it if it doesn't give me the complete picture? I had to argue with it for like 10 minutes before it was very specific about what I could and could not do on an IDR plan.
Man.
So not fully
If I was
omnipotent
president,
yet.
I'd be like, we're not using acronyms anymore. No more acronyms.
Dude, it's so true. It's George Carlin, sanitization of language.
What
we
does
traded
NASA
like
stand for?
you know, I
North
don't
American
know.
Space Agency, I believe.
But that's cool. At least you can pronounce that acronym, like IDR. Like make a phrase out of that.
Yeah.
There's one that's P-A-Y-E. That's kind of cool.
What is that?
Oh, I don't know, but it stands for like pay as you go, basically.
Oh, what were you saying the one the other day? Maps.
Oh.
What was that?
I'm not going to indicate what field I'm in on this, but my field is nothing but acronyms. Which, you know, it's kind of like doctors speaking Latin. It does make you feel a little bit cool. But it's all very basic bullshit.
But yeah, maps. All I knew is that's minor attracted persons.
No, don't even, dude. Don't even joke about that shit.
It's also, there's
Hell
another maps
no.
that does like psychedelic research.
No.
But once you hear the one that I mentioned, then it's kind of like the swastika, where it might have been cool for a while, but the wrong people got a hold of it.
And it's not going away in our lifetime.
Yeah.
No, what's funny is the swastika was actually always a symbol for white power because the best one account I've read is that it was Aryan invaders from Poland that came down. And actually, northern India, at least before Muslims, their religion is the most similar to what you would have found in Middle Europe right before Romans took over than anything else. That's kind of interesting. Huh. So it was all about white people actually being in power when they came through. Like, there's a reason our astrology systems are the same. Sanskrit and Greek are actually very closely related languages, and the same horse sacrifice that's found in Ireland, the same ritual, is found in northern India as well. Over time, obviously local cultures created something new, of course, but still, we got some ties to India. That's all I'm saying. And it was always about white power. That's what the caste system was. Like, hey, we got these cool classes, and guess what? The darker you are, you're more obviously marked to not be in the cool kids class. So even then, swastikas were never cool. Ever! Star of David, though. That was all right.
Yeah, somebody showed how if you overlap the ChatGPT symbol with itself, it forms the Star of David. I'm like, aha. That's
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that makes me like that. Look at my little Zionist heart. All right.
Now, if we were Joe Rogan, we could talk about the pyramids. We could talk about UFOs.
Oh, you and I, we're dumb as fuck. We gotta actually read shit before we talk about
UFOs.
No, I'm not informed. I haven't seen the History Channel with that guy's hair spiking out recently. I have nothing to add. No comment.
Talk about reefer madness and how they made marijuana illegal.
No. Once again, that's an interesting topic. I would want to let's read Chasing the Scream together, and let's do a book club.
The Younger Dryas theory.
And that makes me feel really bad because I have listened to a lot about it and I don't remember much.
Randall Carlson, everybody. A meteorite or asteroid hit southern Canada, and all the glaciers melted, and they can tell so from the big rocks that got moved along the Columbia River. They know that it wasn't like glaciers that slowly melted. And I think it's the archaeological community that's against this. There's a lot of pushback.
A lot of like the archaeological community and the university community wouldn't have gotten away with that alone, though.
And I get it. Whenever we come across something new, there's pushback. It's like,
Galileo, he died for
for being wrong.
and that's part of like what was that cult podcast we listened to? Like it's like no mystery how cults survive. You mix novelty with authority. Put somebody in a completely new circumstance and assert yourself as the authority figure.
Yeah. Well, we got to see Wild Wild Country. That's a good one.
All right.
Osho and his cult.
I'll do it.
It's good, but tonight I want to see Apocalypse Now. Showed you more of it. It's really about the ending of it, but it's good.
All right, I'll be down. I got to do some of my homework so I can afford my plan before the IDR plans are gone. I got to work to afford my student loans. And after that, I'd be happy to.
And a lot of people say, Jasper, just because you're in a wheelchair doesn't mean you need to be a welfare bum. I'm like, no, but I can be. If I choose to be. And I did. So brave, I know.
Actually, that's what I like about you. Like, you're honest about it. Like, I hate it when people are trying to sell it as, like, I don't know, like they're doing it for some noble. It's like, no, it's a game. We're all entitled to play a game.
Well,
choose your game.
That's kind of one of the things I think about is like,
it's like you are a pirate. You hate pirates, but that is exactly the pirate mentality. What a man can do, he will do. So says Johnny Depp.
What Johnny Depp said?
He did. Jack Sparrow. These are the only rules that matter. What a man can do, he will do.
Well, some people are good people. I don't know very many, but I'm sure they're there.
I would say most people are not terrible people. The problem with most people is they fall somewhere in the middle, which can cause either harm or good at any given moment. But there are very few truly good people and very few truly bad people. But it's the middle people everybody's fighting for. Well, and with that, I think it is time to say adieu.
Just in a general vibe of people, I would say, this is like kind of a sum up synopsis of like your bleeding heart liberal versus your beer drinking tailgate.
JD Vance. JD Vance is now like the face for dumbass Republicans.
No, but what he said, it was the last part of his thing that really pissed me off.
How he said it was what he said.
But what he said was very woke. It was very woke. It was this emotional pandering. Be thankful. I think when you get use respect.
Yeah, when you got stupid people on either end of the spectrum, eventually
stupid.
They meet in the middle.
I think he was manipulative and like a serpent.
So, yeah, Republicans have their dumbasses and Democrats have their dumbasses, and they're more alike than people think.
Yeah. Whereas I would say that a Democrat, though, would say, well, I'm a good person, and I try to be better. And a Republican would say, well, I'm a piece of shit, but so is everybody.
I like that. They're going the Socrates method. Like, I don't know anything, but at least I know that I don't know anything.
Yeah, I'm a piece of shit, but so is everybody. I mean, we're all just kind of fucked up trying to figure out. And I'd say there's a little bit more condescension. Just a little bit more
honesty.
But a little bit more condescension because
I don't know which party. I was raised in Eastern Washington Bible thumping territory, and then I went to school with the extremists in Evergreen State College. I don't know which section is more disdainful. They're both pretty good. They're both pretty good at trying to make other people feel small for thinking different.
Well, all right. That was a fun podcast. Hope everybody enjoyed. Stay tuned next time for more bullshit.
Yay. Bullshit hour.
Remember, you're good people out there.